Welcome to the 2013 Candidates Forum, sponsored by Wallingford Community Women. I'm Ann Whitman, the program moderator. This segment features the candidates running for mayor. The format will be as follows. The first part of the program will consist of questions asked of the candidates by members of the local media, including the New Haven Register and the Record Journal, and students from Mark T. Sheehan High School. The second part will allow each candidate to make a closing statement. During the question and answer portion of the program, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. The opposing candidate will be allowed 1 minute for rebuttal. To conclude the program, each candidate will have 3 minutes to make closing remarks. Prior to the program, a flip of the coin determined the order of questioning. Before beginning the questioning, I'd like to introduce the candidates running for mayor. They are Jason Zandri, Democrat; William W. Dickinson, Republican. Luther Turmel of the Register will ask the first question of Jason Zandri.
Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Luther.
You have made technology, or the lack of it in town government and town hall, a key talking point of your campaign. Yet the Republicans are saying, okay, if he believes in it so much, how's he going to pay for it? What's your response?
The first thing that you have to do is you have to analyze what it is we're already doing in town. There is a little bit of technology in use, and a lot of it that is being used is being done locally on desktops for things like word processing and spreadsheets and so forth. What you have to do from that point is go outward to find out what else it is that we could be doing to gain upon those advances already and then to go further. And you have to sit down and analyze all the manual efforts that are being done with paperwork, photocopying, things of that nature, and be able to go after the lowest hanging fruit first. Those are small things that you can do right away. The issue is, and it's been stated already by some of the other candidates running for town council, this is not something you're going to do in 1 year's time. You have to have a plan to do it over a number of years, and you have to set it up just like you would any other type of equipment in town. When we have the Public Works Department as an example, you don't just buy trucks all in one shot and then figure, all right, we're good to go for another 15 years. You have to sit down and analyze what needs to be done where and where it's going to have the biggest impact and return on cost immediately, and you have to go after those. And then as you plan forward in years 2 and 3, you build upon those, and then you move forward till the entire environment is about as integrated as you get, and then you have to look at sustainability from there and moving forward. At that point, you start a plan for replacement. But it's done out over a period of time, and you target the items and the objectives that you can do first and foremost and most inexpensively. They get the fastest return on your investment, and then you move forward from there.
Can you do it without raising taxes?
There's almost nothing that you can do in a town when you're making changes and adding without raising taxes. So you have to carefully plan what it is that you need to do and get it done so that the return on that investment of money spent is done at the fastest rate.
Mr. Dickinson?
As I would agree, it certainly takes careful planning. The town this year has appropriated $450,000 for replacement of the police department software. Another $450,000 was committed for the Board of Education over the next 3 years, and that's without counting all of the other money that is yearly spent on replacing hardware and software. It is a major issue. The other part of it is you want to make sure that your mission, how you want to be presented to the public, is best. And I think having people answer the phone, the personal touch is very important for government. I really do not agree with the mechanized form of response. I think that's frustrating, especially when government uses it.
Jonathan Hastings of Mark T. Sheehan High School will ask the next question of William Dickinson.
Hi, Mr. Dickinson. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Now, you've been mayor of this town since 1984, which is an incredible feat, and I congratulate you on that. Now, I think it would be kind of interesting to ask, what's your opinion on poll limits? Do you think they should be implemented, or do you think they should just stay the way they are and not have any?
I'm sorry.
Poll limits. Term limits.
Oh, term limits.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be in favor of poll limits.
Yeah. Sorry.
But term limits is something that does get debated. In some ways, certainly at the federal level, term limits are there. President of the United States can only have 2 terms. In some ways, however, the term limits run in the face of the basis of democracy. Democracy is that we trust the people to make a decision. Term limits are saying, well, we don't trust the public to make a decision. We're going to say a person can't run beyond a certain number of terms. So that, to me, has something of a negative cast about the way democracy functions. I know there are states that have term limits on nearly every office, California being one. And knowing someone who lives out there, the report is that it's just the opposite effect of what you would expect. As soon as someone is elected to an office, they know that there's a certain term and they're out. They spend the next several years making sure that they're eligible to run for the next available office. So that affects all of their decision making during the term of the when they're an incumbent. Gray Davis, a past governor, had held every elected seat available in California before becoming governor. So I'm not sure term limits necessarily have the effect expected. I think what should be looked at really is the money side of running elections and campaigns, and perhaps the undue influence that major money and special interests have in ensuring that an incumbent is reelected. So that to me is more of a legitimate issue than term limits.
Thank you. Mr. Zandri?
Thank you for the question, Jonathan. I would have to agree that I think that with the ability to come in every 2 years and be able to choose your Board of Ed, your counselors, your mayor, and even the offices at the state and federal level, I think that the best way to have any type of limitation is self-governing. The people have the right to come out to vote, and it can have a positive and negative effect if you have term limits. You might have a very good individual in a certain office that does things very well, holds down costs that get forced out simply on the notion of term limits, and I don't agree with that assessment. I think the people have the ability to self-govern themselves by showing up every 2 years and choosing, and I think that's the most paramount thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nahaj Dorde of Mark T. Sheehan High School will ask the next question of Jason Zandri.
Hi, Mr. Zandri. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. What real life or outside experience would you bring to the council that would be an asset to the town?
In my experience over the past 15 years in information technology, one of the tasks that I've had is to be able to understand a business to make it successful. And in doing that, I have to learn businesses on the fly. I've had to work with companies that make elevator systems, refrigeration systems, utilities, and I'm not coming into their environments and helping them just deploy technology. I have to understand what it is that their business cycle is like and what it is they're trying to get out the door. And then, by leveraging the tools that come with technology, help them be successful in their business. And I think that being thrown into different environments, both as a customer liaison as well as a support professional and as an account manager, provide me that insight to be able to do the same types of things as mayor of Wallingford. The same things that I've brought to my professional experience as an information technology subject matter expert, I would be bringing to the town through the different departments. I have to learn to understand what their departments do and what they need in order to be successful, and then work with them to make that so. Because successful departments and successful employees lead to a successful Wallingford. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson?
I have no comment.
Andrew Regali of the Record Journal will ask the next question of William Dickinson.
How's it going tonight? At the last town council meeting last week, you had mentioned that Public Works Director Henry McCauley is being unfairly criticized. You used the word lynched for his handling of materials at the dog pit, otherwise known at 91 North Turnpike Road. When you mentioned that he was being unfairly criticized, were you referring to your challenger Jason here, who brought Henry before the council, you know, a month prior and kind of interrogated him. Was that questioning proper? Was it inappropriate? A lot of people bring up, you know, accountability. Has anybody have been held accountable for this incident?
You know, my comments were directed at comments at that meeting that basically found Mr. McCulley willful, malicious, pretty aggressive terms with regard to the incident in question. I don't have any problem with questions raised by responsible elected officials concerned about the welfare of the town, concerned about the way business is done. I have no problem with that. But when conclusions are already reached without, in my opinion, factual material to back up those conclusions, then I think you know, a public employee deserves some defense also.
Who was bringing up unfactual material?
Pardon?
Who was bringing up unfactual material?
Well, but the conclusion, the factual material is that there was no evidence of contamination of the aquifer, no evidence of contamination of the wetland. After investigation by town officials as well as the primary agency, Department of Environmental Protection, Energy and Environmental Protection, I'm aware of their reaction to it, and they, frankly, in my opinion, did not find it an egregious issue.
Many have asked for accountability. I mean, do you feel that people have already been held accountable and it's not an issue at this point? Or has anybody been held accountable?
I think Mr. McCulley has been feeling very accountable, and you know, certainly I am concerned about unfair attacks upon him. By the same token, he admitted that he had not acted as quickly as perhaps he should have, but I mean, that's no serious harm has been done. So to be characterizing this as something requiring someone to be disciplined or fired, I think, is inappropriate.
Mr. Zandri?
Thank you. What I will say on the subject is the fact that since 2009, we were told by DEEP to not dump there. And I'm thankful that the aquifer was not affected. And I'm also thankful from the story in the paper today, it looks like DEEP won't be hitting the town with any penalties either. But that's beside the point. We were told not to do it. As a matter of fact, the story in the paper this morning outlined the same type of street sweepings being dumped in the Meriden landfill by Meriden on the Wallingford side of the landfill over another protected aquifer. I think the town of Wallingford would be beside itself if Meriden said, you know what, we've got this ruling from prior to 2005, we're just going to keep dumping there because we don't have anywhere else to put it, and we have other priorities right now than finding another location.
Do you agree with how the mayor has handled the situation since 2009, if, you know, the town was made aware of this in 2009?
The town was made aware of this in 2009. I think more follow-up is required because we basically went against the ruling and continued to dump and store there. And we should have investigated it further, and some more action should be taken, despite the fact that there was no impact to the aquifer.
Thank you. Jonathan Hastings of Mark T. Sheehan High School will ask the next question of Jason Zandri.
Hi, Mrs. Zandri. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Now, concerning town government and town departments, do you believe that there are any sort of services that should be eliminated from the town? And if you believe so, why? And are there any departments that you believe might need improvements?
I think there's always room to improve in every department. Just the fact that we do the amount of manual labor that we end up doing in town, and when I use the term manual labor, I'm talking about a lot of the back office stuff, the paperwork, the time spent on the phones. I do agree with the sentiment that people do like to call and reach a person. They don't want to have to walk a phone tree. But I think there's a lot of room for process improvement, and that leads to save time. And when you've got saved time on your hands, you've got the ability to get more work done. And the ability to get more work done leads to being able to have more things done sooner, and then getting more things accomplished means we're able to take on more work. And that's the improvement that we want. We've got people in the town that are looking for services to be done, and there's a backlog, or people have to call you back, or we've got to look this information up. If there were more expedient ways for them to do it themselves online before they even have to contact anybody in the office, I think that would be helpful for the individual trying to get the work done, and even the departments themselves. A lot of these departments, especially the department heads, have already indicated that they're doing work at home before they even get to work because they need access to the internet. They're sending emails at 5 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock at night. They shouldn't have to do that as part of their job. And in order to get these things done and accomplished, we're going to have to be able to look at these process improvements and then get them implemented. And that's how you get more done. I'm not looking to streamline anything to cut services to the people of town. I'm looking to get things done better and faster so that we can do more for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Short of significant financial deterioration, I would think the town should certainly consider with the array of services that are offered now. I will say that those who need email, those who need further upgrade in their office, they can receive it, and that has happened frequently. But if they never speak about what their need is, that is not going to occur. I mean, they voice their concern, and meetings are held, and what is discussed is what is appropriate, what is not, you know, how frequently is something needed. And certainly we've provided email capability in a number of offices after it's been voiced that there's a need. But again, if there's not a voicing of need, then we do not go out and solicit the need.
Thank you.
Naha Tradordi of Martesian High School will ask the next question of Mr. Dickinson.
Hi, Mr. Dickinson. How are you?
Good.
So, are you in favor of using more money from the town's fund balance reserve to fund projects, or do you think it is better left in an account and only used for real emergencies?
Could you repeat the question? I'm not sure I understand it.
Would you be in favor of using more money from the town's fund balance reserve to fund projects, or do you think it is better left in the account and only used for real emergencies?
Well, the fund balance account is used annually to offset the mill rate. And this current budget, it's approximately, well, it is $4,300,000. We're trying to bring that to a lower figure. So fund balance is used on an annual basis for operational costs. Beyond that, however, using reserves of that kind, capital money for operational needs, it is a problem, because when the money doesn't repeat, you have a big financial hole that then requires an increase in taxes to cover the difference. We also maintain a AAA credit reserve, and I believe that's close to $10 million now. And that is, again, to assure the credit rating agencies that we are consistent with our financing, and as the budget goes up, the reserve must go up. But that AAA reserve is very important to the community and provides us with advantages with regard to financing and other matters that are important. So there's always a judgment. The important thing is to manage the money of the town as a trustee. It's not my money, it's not the council's money, it's the people's money. And you have to function as a fiduciary.
Thank you.
Mr. Zandri?
I would agree that to use the fund balance for operational and day-to-day expenses is a mistake, because as the mayor points out correctly, you run into a problem when you don't have those reserves to tap into in a future year. And the same is true even for cap and non-recurring expenses that are not set. The last thing that you want to do is to burn up savings for a capital project. Most capital projects should be planned out, and in most cases they are the type and size that should be bonded out for, like the school roof project. Even if we had $75 million in the bank, the last thing you want to do is expend that and not get the return on the money that you have. The amount of money that we have in reserve is set there for the AAA bond rating, and is also a certain amount that you're supposed to have on hand based on the size of the budget that we have. I think that what we should do is maintain from it growing in excess of what is needed to maintain that rating, because at that point, the way that you end up with money in a savings account for a town is effectively overtaxation, and we shouldn't be doing that.
Thank you. Andrew Regali of the Record Journal will ask the next question of Jason Zandri.
Hey, Jason. Besides the use of technology, if you could change any one practice of the current mayor, of the current administration, what would it be and why?
Any current practice. I guess the current practice that I would like to see changed here in Wallingford is the inclusion of more input from the citizens. I feel a lot of times things that are brought forward to the council or phone calls to the mayor, they get heard, but I don't know how well they're listened to. When we talk about very minor things that could be done for quality of life issues in town to change to make people happy, we don't engage on them. And I really think that that gives a sense of ownership and pride to people in the town. From small things like the bicycle racks. These things have been brought up since 2006. They're a minor expense, if that, and they could have been installed at any time. And it's a little something for downtown. Someone could say, look, the town responded to a request to put in bike racks. That, or when the veterans wanted to use the showmobile.
Would you maintain a presence on, social media? You're on Facebook a lot. You answer people's questions. If you were, elected mayor, would you continue, that presence?
You must. It's the only way to be able to stand in lockstep with the people of this generation. This generation is online. They are not making as many phone calls.
Some would argue you're spending more time on the internet than actually doing your job if you're on.
Well, that's arguable, because if you're online anyway and you're doing work, you're already engaged with what you're doing. And if you're in the middle of a report and you're reviewing something, yeah, you can't respond to every instant message that comes up. But if you spend time, it's just like management. I have to return phone calls. I have to follow up with people for meeting. If I shell out an hour's worth of time or a half hour at the beginning of the day and part of my lunch, half hour, and then maybe half hour at the end of the day to follow up, there's absolutely no reason why you can't be doing that, and it's the best way to maintain with people. I mean, I do it all night long. I've done it from the council chambers here this evening. So the ability to keep in touch with people and keep your finger on the pulse, that's the easiest way to do it.
Mr. Dickinson?
Local government is just not a research organization. Most of the tasks are very repetitive. Where there is research, certainly the ability to be online is there, and where it needs to be extended or improved, that's fine. I know of 2 other communities where the mayors opened email accounts and ended up, they told me they thought they were going to have to hire part-time people to be able to respond to all of the missives, the communications that came in. Now, whether they were vital or not, that's anyone's question. But you have a telephone right there. We have staff in the office. It's very direct and simple to contact us. I would be very concerned about having to hire more people, and then they think they're talking to me, and they're not talking to me. They're talking to someone else who is sending the text or the email.
Luther Trammell of the New Haven Register will ask the next question. Mr. Dickinson.
Mr. Mayor, earlier this evening, there have been a couple candidates that have said what a wonderful town Wallingford is, and I'd like to sort of look at Wallingford as an employer. You have a lot of department heads who've been here for a significant amount of time, which some would say promotes stability. But there are some who are critical who would say that it promotes a stagnation and in some cases might even suggest an old boy network within town government. How do you respond to a criticism like that?
Well, you can have that occur. I mean, is that possible? It's always possible. I don't believe it exists here. We have Peter Struble, fire chief, an incredibly dedicated, conscientious person. He could easily handle a job at a state level. I would put him against anyone in the country with regard to his duties and his constant education and look for better ways of doing things. We have a police chief who is a professional. We have George Adair, the utility managers. Our utilities are well run. I mean, these people are undertaking new things, whether it's the wholesale power purchase or taking on discussions with the state over phosphorus. We have people who really are looking for the advance looking to respond before something becomes a problem. So whether all the major departments, recreation has a tremendous number of programs. And then we get to education. Education clearly is at the forefront of most of what the state is requiring, and including now getting the entire town behind 100% graduation. What a great quest. 100% graduation for all high school students. So I do not find what you're talking about as far as, you know, people just looking to retire and not doing their work. I don't think that's the case at all.
Mr. Zandri?
I believe that as long as an individual is always challenged by the job that they've got, and it's in a changing environment and new standards come up and they're looking for new direction and better ways to do things, I think that those individuals will always excel at what they're doing. And I think we're very fortunate here in Wallingford that we have very many department heads that do that. Some do it better than others, but I think they all lean towards excellence, and they probably could leave and do other things. I think they are very dedicated to the job they do and to the town of Wallingford. And I feel that as long as they are in line with doing the best job that they can possibly do and push the edge a little bit, that we're always going to be fortunate to have those types of people in those departments.
Naha Doherty of Mark T. Sheehan High School will ask the next question of Jason Zandri.
Mr. Zandri, do you or would you favor using town money to fund such things as private parking or lot improvements, or do you think it is best to allow those businesses to fund it themselves?
With respect to the downtown parking, there's a number of lots that we already own here in town. I think that one of the things that we do need to do is to put together, just like any other plan that we should have for the town, a plan to get all those lots rehabilitated, repaved, relined, re-signed, and better identifiable so that people can utilize them. I think at the same time, a lot of the lots that we do own, they abut business parking. There's some question as to where the ownership lines are, where the property lines are. I think we need to have discussions with the property owners and get those settled, resurveyed if needed. And if we're going to have a 5 to 10 year plan to rehabilitate these lots, we should be bringing them in. One lot that I can think of an example off the top of my head is the one that's behind the Bank of America. Because those lots are one right on top of the other, it would almost look bad if they redid their lot and we didn't redo ours, or vice versa. So you'd want to have it in a scale of work being done there to maybe engage with the business and say, look, the town is looking over the next 3 years to execute time on this lot to rehabilitate it. Is you as the business owner, are you looking to do this as well? Because if we can do this together, there could be some cost savings and it will beautify the entire area. I think one of the most critical notions of this downtown is that there is limited parking, and that is simply not true. Out of 365 days in a year, I don't think you can pick 36, 10% where there's no parking down here. There's Celebrate Wallingford, there's concerts on the green, there's the Twilight Tunes. There are a few things that do tax the parking. But on any night that you can't find parking across the street or even in the new Wood and Kaplan temporary lot, this town hall is 90% empty. Even at 5 o'clock, when town hall is closing and the businesses are packed, there are places to park. You simply have to walk a block.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes, I would answer the question by saying most of the lots that are privately owned or portions have been under lease by the town for many, many years, many back to the 60s. So under those circumstances, I really believe in order to make an efficient improvement, it is very appropriate if we can receive, and right now they're year-to-year leases, if we can receive 30-plus year on leases, then the town should be in a position to move forward and do an entire lot, as long as we have 30 years of use for the public. At that point, it basically is public property, and we can use it to the betterment of the community. The downtown is a precious item, and we want it to remain vital. We want it to remain a center of the community that we can be proud of, and that requires investment. And if that means that we're improving property for lease, then absolutely that should be done.
Thank you.
Andrew Regali of the Record Journal will ask the next question of Mr. Dickinson.
You've previously stated that you're not in favor of installing prescription drug drop box at the police station, because there are plenty of ways to, rid of unwanted prescription drugs, safely in the trash, which is absolutely true. But there's been organization, Coalition for a Better Wallingford, that's been pushing for this, and a lot of people say there's drug issues in town. Has your position wavered at all, and have you considered maybe, doing it just as a goodwill, a sign of good faith, or do you feel like it's unnecessary?
Well, and certainly the Coalition for Wallingford, the concern about drug use is a very legitimate concern. We know it exists, and we certainly want to educate people and discourage the abuse of drugs and the destruction of precious lives. The question is that appropriate for a police department? As I stated, we have in Chief D'Ortenzio a prime example of someone who is a professional and very dedicated to the ability of the police department to function appropriately. He has concerns about what issues that will raise for his workforce. I listen to that. I have another concern, and that is, in today's world, I do not think you should put anything inside the lobby of a police department where basically packages are brought in with an inability to know what's inside the package, to be placed inside a box. I have real concerns about that as a security measure, especially when federal and state, all the literature states the pharmaceuticals should be destroyed at home, and there are a variety of ways that are outlined. But I do listen to the police department, and I don't think that we should risk the integrity or the security of that department by something like this that certainly could result in a tragedy.
Mr. Zandri?
Thank you. Up here on the council, we've heard from a number of individuals from the Coalition for Better Wallingford, and they've outlined numerous communities throughout the state that already do this. And every single message from those police chiefs has been more or less the same, that we're talking about 15 minutes worth of time expenditure a month to take care of these medications that are dropped off. This goes back to my quality of life point, in that this is something that a segment of the population wants. It was going to be delivered at no cost to the town because they were going to install this box. They got the box on a grant and the work was going to be done. And if we're going to talk about the amount of time that the police force is going to need to maintain this box, we spend more time delivering the town council materials by police officer than we would maintaining that box. If we really need to cut down and maintain that box, then stop delivering the agendas for the town council twice a month by police car and maintain a quality of life issue for the people that want it. Thank you.
Luther Trammell of the New Haven Register will ask the next question of Jason Zandri.
Jason, a lot has been made about Wallingford being a great place to do business, the low electric rates, and what have you. But it's sort of a fact of life, particularly among Connecticut communities these days, that there's always competition for the existing businesses, whether it's somebody coming in from out of state and trying to poach your local business, or another town trying to do the same thing. Can Wallingford continue to exist with a part-time development professional, such as what Doreen DeSaro was?
You're talking about the Economic Development Commission.
That's correct, yes.
I really believe what we need to do in the future is to get a full-time individual in there. We should be sitting down with property owners and developers that have got land in this town, and we should build a database of what's available today and be updating it regularly. And we should be out there aggressively trying to get these businesses to come to Wallingford. When businesses are scoping different areas, yes, they're definitely looking at your electric rates here in town, but there are so many other things that they're looking for. They're looking for an area draw, like up near the Meriden Square or down in Universal Drive in North Haven. And we need to be aggressively going after those people. They don't know. Whole Foods does not know we have great electric rates unless we've gone out and proactively contacted them. We need to be reaching out. We need to tell them that our electric rates are great, that we've got this AAA bond rating that helps us keep our taxes low, that we've got all this highway access, we've got all this community involvement, there's different things that are going on. We need to be proactively selling this town. People are not flocking to Wallingford anymore just because the electric rates are low. That's a selling point, but we need to sell ourselves. And with a part-time individual, she cannot do it because there's just simply not enough time during the day. And there's a lot to be said for understanding what businesses are drawn to the area and why, and how we can get them here. And the only way to do that is to work with the property owners and understand what the developers need, and some of these businesses too. We need to understand why certain businesses pick certain areas and make our area as lucrative to them as possible.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes, we have a very good program of contacting businesses, economic development. In the past year and a half to 2 years, 13 companies of 10,000 square feet or more have either expanded or located in Wallingford. Another 47 businesses have opened of a smaller nature. So there is a good program. Could we look to have a full-time person? Well, I suppose it's possible, but again, now we're adding overhead, and we don't want to do that without a clear idea of what will be achieved. The efforts made by the office, the Economic Development Commission, excellent group, and Doreen DeSaro, who's been our coordinator, have been very good. And short of, again, something additional that would really justify additional salary, I don't think it's necessary.
Jonathan Hastings of Mark T. Sheehan High School will ask the next question to Mr. Dickinson.
Hello. Now, earlier you were talking about how Wallingford has a AAA credit rating and a $10 million surplus. So my question is, why wouldn't you take some of that money and invest it in more technology, particularly a direct deposit of paycheck system, which would seemingly benefit everyone greatly?
Well, it's not a $10 million surplus. That was the credit rating reserve. So in order to keep the AAA, you have to maintain it's close to $10 million as a separate amount of money, because the credit rating agencies want to see that you have that latitude to protect you against an emergency. So you couldn't use that. The technology is an operational expense, and it has to be replaced. Right now we're on a schedule on our intranet system of replacing every 5 years. So you really don't make the money back. You're really constantly replenishing. The use of the money should be restricted because of the difficulties in raising that money again. Now, the direct deposit doesn't benefit the community. It's really something sought by the employees. What I'd like to see, if we're going to go to direct deposit, I'd like to go to a biweekly paycheck. With a biweekly paycheck, we will cut in half our expenses of payroll with fees with banks, etc. And it's part of bargaining. If employees want something, then we're offering it. Yes, we'll do that, but we want something back. So it becomes one of those things that get bargained at negotiations for a contract. And if we can achieve that with biweekly, cut the fees, then that's fine, because you have to remember, to the person receiving direct deposit, there isn't a fee. To the employer, there's a fee. Banks are charging whether you're using checks or whether you're using direct deposit. There's a fee on everything. So we'd like to better manage the costs there by going to direct deposit rather than just giving it away and giving the taxpayer a higher cost.
Thank you.
Mr. Zandri?
Thank you for the question. We've already seen a couple of contracts come forward with a 2-week pay schedule baked in on the contingency that they get offered the direct deposit. So the right things are going into the contracts. Unfortunately, the last contract we had that in, we negated it up here, and it's going to end up in arbitration. And items like that can get lost when it goes back to the arbiter. So we may never get all the unions in line for a 2-week pay rate. so that we can implement direct deposit unless we're going to negotiate with them fairly and above board. I think we need to be driving that point. The mayor makes a point of, we're going to give you direct deposit, give us something back. We're already getting something. Yes, there's still fees to use direct deposit, but they are smaller than cutting checks and maintaining paperwork. And there's also the consideration of the employees' time and effort to go and cash these things and not being back on the clock on time. And there's a litany of other things that are non-tangibles that all equate into costs and savings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Regali of the Record Journal will ask the next question of Jason Zandri.
Republicans have argued that Wallingford residents of Wallingford live in an oasis. You've argued that's a myth. Property taxes, what you've said, that property taxes have risen, mill rate has risen, but there are no new services. So how can you add services? You said the town lacks services, but previously, earlier tonight, you said that there's no way to add services without increasing taxes. What services would you add, and how would you do them?
Well, in order to add services, you have to figure out what the return is going to be, and if there is going to be a cost associated with that, is it worth the cost? So it would be no different than, I'll use an example like, say, trash pickup. If the residents of town really wanted to have trash pickup, you'd have to engage them in a discussion on what that cost would be, and then to be able to assign that cost, you'd have to figure out what it would be to entail for the entire town to pick up trash. And then you have to have a conversation and explain. Homeowners pay about $30 a month to haul the trash, so they're paying $360 a year. If we were to offer that service, your taxes would probably go up $250. But there's two ways to look at that. You're getting an economy of scale because the town would be doing the work. The $250 would be part of your tax bill, which now you can write off. The $360 you pay right now to the trash hauler, you can't. So that's an example of how you could add a service if you went that way, if it was something that the people wanted to do.
How would you keep property taxes down? Republicans might argue that's out of their hands. It's valuation. It's,
Well, revaluation, right, and that's exactly where my original discussion came from. When back in 2005, when our mill rate was 26 mills, we had a certain set amount for the prices of homes and businesses in the town, and then those things rose. After revaluation, residents rose higher than the commercial industrial. Then you lower the mill rate to 21 so that we're still bringing in the certain amount of money we need to run the town. But look who's up higher. Where did the burden shift? The people's homes appreciated faster than the businesses did. So when that mill rate was dropped evenly, there's still this disparity. And then 5 years later, as taxes increased 20%, you've got the differential plus the 20%. That's why from revaluation to today, your housing taxes have gone up 40%.
So what do you change?
What do you change? You have to make businesses that we do in town, the business and the work we do in town, more efficient, because we are pouring money out the door doing things the old way.
Mr. Dickinson?
Your property appreciates in value. The taxes you pay are based upon the value of your property. The revaluation is required by state law so that your taxes are fairly applied to the value of your property. For most people, that's a good thing. If your property goes up in value, it means your investment in your house, the property around it, is appreciating, and you have the advantage of having something worth more value at the point you sell it. If it goes down, you have the ominous view of a mortgage that may be higher than the value of your property. The mill rate is applied against whatever that value is. So if the property values are going up, and in a nice community, property values are going to go up because people want to live there. It reflects a quality of life. And in our economy, business property is not appreciating as much because the economy is in difficult state.
Luther Turmel of the New Haven Register will ask the next question of Mr. Dickinson.
Mr. Mayor, a lot of politicians run for another term in office because they have what I guess what people would call generically unfinished business. They have something more left that they want to do. You've been running this town since the mid-1980s. What can there possibly be left to do that makes you want to run for another term as mayor?
Well, I hear you say I've been running the town. I don't quite look at it that way. A lot of people are involved in the direction of the town. Certainly the town council participates in that, and certainly all the departments, and everyone has to do their share. Certainly the mayor's office is one of the offices that deals with that. But there always are new things, and the wholesale purchase of energy by our electric division, huge, huge. This town has never done that. This is something that could have major benefits in the future, and it's going to take probably a period of 4 to 6 years to really understand how well we're going to do with it and how to implement it. But we're no longer going to be part of the CMEC organization. We will be purchasing the wholesale power through the ISO New England, pursuant to FERC regulations. We're going to participate in this grand marketplace that personally I find bizarre in the extreme, and that's where I think the state and our national government have got to smarten up. This system does not work for us. So there's a big thing right there. And we've just undertaken another new program, which is the Emergency Medical Transport Division, funded through insurance. It's an enterprise fund to supply to ambulance. That's an exciting thing. We're not sure it's going to work. How is that going to go? So there's 2 examples right there. Real thoughtful, innovative approaches, changing completely the way we've done things in the past. That's exciting.
Mr. Zandri?
Well, there's no follow-up for me, so thank you.
Jonathan Hastings of the Mark T. Sheehan High School. We'll ask the next question of Jason Zandri.
Hi again.
Hi.
Now, what's your opinion on the new location of the train station? Do you believe that it's necessary, and why?
For the new trains that are going to be coming through, we couldn't utilize the existing train station, even if we built platforms there, because if the train was to stop there, a commuter train going through on top of the Amtrak trains that go through, those gates would be down an excessive amount of time, and it would hold up far too much traffic and cause traffic problems there for not only people trying to get to and from the east, the west side of town to east and vice versa, but for even emergency personnel trying to get across Quinnipiac Street. So without a doubt, that station had to be relocated. There were 2 choices that were basically presented. While there was input from the people and there was input from the council, I really feel at the state level they more or less made up their own mind where they wanted it to go and how they wanted to do it. It's definitely necessary to have it where it not have it where it currently is, because again, because of the traffic problems that it would raise. Being able to get the entire 8 cars either north or south of this area in order to allow the gates to be down only for the period of time the train going through is critically important. That allows for better traffic flow. And because of the way you'd have to retrofit, the trains are platform-based, not ground-based like the Amtrak ones, you really needed to almost start from scratch in a new area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have doubts that the commuter rail will certainly be an immediate success. I just don't see, given the state of the economy, from what I understand, there are fewer people working in Connecticut today than in 1990. These are sobering things. So will the commuter rail work? It's really an open question. However, the state of Connecticut has determined that this is a priority and they are going to proceed with it. So at that point, what is the best location for a station? And unfortunately, no location is available. No one wants to sell, and the state is in the position to say, well, we'll have to take it by eminent domain. That's unfortunate for whoever's owner of the property. However, they will receive fair market value for their property, but certainly we understand they really don't want to sell. But the town of Wallingford really does not control that. And it is a state program, and if it works, and there really will be a lot of mass transit, fantastic.
Thank you. Naha Trajori of Mark T. Sheehan High School will ask the next question to Mr. Dickinson.
Hi. So, how would you plan on working with our state and federal officials to get more of our tax dollars back to the town of Wallingford?
Well, I think that's an effort in lobbying. I can think of one project right now, and that's the proposed phosphorus removal from wastewater. That's expected to be in excess of a $20 million improvement to our wastewater treatment plant. In the past, that is in the 1990s, 90% of improvements for wastewater treatment plants were funded by state and federal governments. That money is no longer there. So we have real concerns about this being visited upon businesses and citizens in Wallingford, and are discussing, protesting a little, and hopefully we'll come up with a less costly means of removal of the phosphorus. But that's an example. Lobbying did occur, and I think some additional money was provided in this last budget, maybe up to a third for the first towns that would be applying, but it will require lobbying. You meet with the legislators, you go to public hearings in Hartford, you try to contact as many people as possible and encourage money to be favorably brought to the community. Certainly education is an area that we are always concerned about. That's where most of the money is dedicated. $22 million comes from the state, and we want them to keep increasing that.
Mr. Zandri.
So with respect to state and federal dollars being brought back to Wallingford, there's always that argument that we shouldn't be engaging with those programs. They shouldn't be there in the first place. And while it's always a nice thing to say, well, maybe we should just be keeping all our dollars local, presently that's not what happens. You get taxed at the state level, you get taxed at the federal level, and then these programs are put together. And until enough effort happens where those programs all stop, we definitely should be going after them for our community, or they go to another community. We pay in a fraction and we take back a fraction. So hopefully it balances out or works in our favor. We definitely should be adhering to the guidelines of the programs. I would not want to spend time writing grants and requests that don't meet the proper guidelines, because then we end up having a situation where we don't get the offering because it's outside the parameters of what it is. I think we should be aligning ready projects for those types of things and going after them aggressively.
Luther Trammell of the New Haven Register will ask a question of Jason Zandri.
I'd like to stay on that subject and just pursue it a little further. Whenever it's been discussed about trying to get money from the state or trying to get the state to knock off some mandate, a lot has been made by candidates over the ages about working well with the legislative delegation. But let me pose the question to you. I mean, if all politics is personal, do you feel it would be more effective for you, if you were elected mayor of Wallingford, to periodically go up to Hartford? I mean, it's only half an hour up the road, and get in the faces, not of the local delegation, because you deal with them on a regular basis here in town, but to get up there and let the governor and let the State Department heads know, hey, you know, this is an important issue to us.
Thank you for that question. I really believe it's critical of any mayor, Wallingford, Meriden, First Selectman, whatever town it might be or whatever city might be, whatever the chief officer is of the town, to work with their local legislators like you mentioned and find out what's on the docket up in Hartford. And if there is something critical being discussed, then time should be set aside to make a visit to Hartford in person, because without them hearing the voice of what's going on from the ground, I think it's very easy to dismiss, well, you know, we didn't hear anything from Cheshire, we didn't hear anything from Meriden, we didn't hear anything from Wallingford, this must be acceptable. We need to be better in tune with what's going on, and we need to be working together to either voice our agreement or displeasure with things that are being pushed down. And the only way to do that sometimes is upfront, close, and personal, because letters and emails and things of that nature, some of the nuances get lost. Some of the passion behind what you're trying to communicate isn't there in the written word or the electronically transmitted word. You need to get up there and tell them, listen, this is killing our town, pulling funding like this. You need to keep this. We've been taxed on it forever, and now you're yanking it away and telling us just to figure out a way to do it locally, and we can't do that. And we need to be able to make sure they understand the criticality and the essence of what the problem might be. Or if it's a favorable thing, you know, maybe that's a situation where you actually tell them, look, I'm glad this program was kept. I'm glad it was expanded because this is what it does for us here in Wallingford. And I think that it goes without saying that you need to be up in Hartford for some of that. And so I would definitely plan to be doing that.
Mr. Dickinson?
I would agree. There are times the mayor does go up to Hartford. Certainly I've been up there on a number of issues, including phosphorus, stream flow regulations, and other legislation. It is a necessary part of having the town be represented. We also hold a meeting with our legislators and provide them a booklet that lists all of the concerns we have with regard to legislation that would be taken up in any given year. Every year in December, January, we meet with them.
Jonathan Hastings of March Sheehan High School asks the next question to Mr. Dickinson.
Hello. Now, concerning town commissions, do you like the current process where they're appointed, or would you rather see it as if they were elected?
Well, currently, I believe you're speaking about the Inland Wetlands Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission. Currently, by our charter, they are appointed. The town would have to change its charter to allow them to be elected. I think they work well as appointed officials. Sometimes I think there's confusion when someone is elected, especially on planning and zoning, that they have the discretion to do whatever people want them to do. And planning and zoning, by its own rules, must abide by its regulations. They adopt regulations with a public hearing, and once those regulations are in place, they can't vary from them because they have a lot of pressure on something. Unless it's a special permit, they are restricted to what their regulations require. So both systems are used throughout the state. If we really had problems here with the appointed system, then there might be need for change, but I'm not aware of significant problems. So given that it works well to try to change the charter and have a longer ballot and perhaps more confusion, it's not necessary in my opinion at this point.
Thank you.
Mr. Zandri?
I would agree with Mayor Dickinson on that. I think that if there was a major problem that we would have to take a look at, you know, opening the charter to take a look at the way that we currently do it. But even if it wasn't as complicated as having a charter revision for it, even if it was something simple that the council could vote on, let's just say for the sake of discussion, I don't see currently enough issues that would predicate us to have to doing anything like that. I think the process is open enough for the appointments. People that are interested in becoming appointed approach either party. Sometimes they approach both with an interest to want to be involved and engaged, and the process is reviewed. And I think that everybody up here, or at the other places that the appointments occur, I think they look at it as who's the best person for the job. And I like to believe that they would continue to do so, and we would maintain that system.
Thank you.
Naha Trajorde of Marty Sheehan High School will ask the next question to Mr. Zandri.
How would you propose to help the town of Wallingford save energy? Would you favor bringing an energy services company to contract with?
Energy services contract company. Again, being that we already own the electric division and all the infrastructure that we have here in town, I think we would be very hard pressed to be able to improve much upon what we already do. Now, does that preclude us from maybe looking into it? No, I mean, I think there's always room for improvement. I mean, there may be small changes that could be made with, say, the lighting in town. I know there's a very small pilot program right now reviewing the different types of lighting to try to get the same amount of lumens or illumination from the devices, and that ends up using less power. I think those are smart initiatives to look at. I don't know that we would necessarily need to have a full-blown consultant come in to do that, but I know we've done other energy audit type things for the different buildings in town, and I think those were very wise decisions for us to make as well, because anytime we can decrease energy use in the building, that's savings, whether it's our carbon footprint, our expense, you know, in heat or electric, and it actually benefits us as far as the grid goes as well. We don't have to purchase as much electricity during peaking times when it's the most expensive to buy it. So I think that right now we're in pretty good shape. We could always take a look at that if we ever felt the need was necessary. I don't see it on a short or a long-term horizon, but there are always different things that we can look at as far as being more energy efficient and energy conscious in our buildings.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes, we do have a program. The funds are used from the Conservation Load Management Program. There has been a walkthrough of public buildings. I believe some $600,000 has been spent with regard to projects in the public schools, and another $200,000 to $300,000 has been spent on other projects. A total of $6 million, I believe it is, has been spent town-wide with private parties, and this has been done through CMEC, the cooperative that we're a member of, and they use the money that's in all of our rates that fund the Conservation Load Management Program. So there has been significant efforts to reduce the use of energy, and that will continue.
Thank you.
Andrew Regali of the Record Journal will ask the last question of the night of Mr. Dickinson.
You've refused a pay raise for years, keeping your salary at just over $73,000. Only this year did the council approve a $12,000 raise you were against but accepted. You know, before that, your secretary made more money than you. That raise would go into effect next term for whoever's elected. While sizable, that amount of money is not comparable to leaders in surrounding towns who make some make north of $140,000 in Sulington and Cheshire and Meriden. You said you're setting an example for employees, in these tough economic times. Trying to deter unions from for asking for large pay increases. Some would say, not just Democrats, but even current Republicans on the council, that by not agreeing to raises, you're deterring qualified candidates from running for mayor. Do you disagree with that? What's your stance? Why haven't you, looked for raises?
I've been outraged by it. I just can't believe that this has happened. No, I have not refused pay increases. Just saying, I wouldn't have the right to do that. I mean, I could say if the money was in the budget and I refused to take it, I suppose that would be refusing a pay increase. But it has to be budgeted. But just let me, it has to be approved in a budget. Now, when the pay increases usually were put in the budget, they were combined with significant efforts to take money from places like the utilities to be paying for sizable portions of the budget. And in those instances, the budget was vetoed. And as a result, there was no pay increase. But it has not been a case of me, the budget for the mayor's salary is $140,000, so I only took the $70,000 or whatever it was. That's not the case.
Do you think
I'm like anyone else. Sure, I'd like to make more money, but I do feel it is very important that examples be set. Public.
Do you think it's fair to future candidates, though? I mean, you can't be made.
The issue is not future candidates. The issue is, how are we going to survive the current economic climate? How are we going to have a government at the local level that can be respected and is reasonably run at a cost that is affordable? That's a serious issue. I think maybe it's only beginning to be addressed at some other levels of government. We've got to stop being in it for ourselves. It's got to be in it for us. It's all of us. So to the extent that I can set an example on that, I have, and I will continue to do so.
Unions continue to ask for raises, though, that you guys reject.
And I don't become the example to say, oh, look at this, he says one thing and does another. No, if I say something, I will live it. I'll walk the walk and talk the talk.
Mr. Zandri?
Right now, with the town and the current salary of the mayor, the lieutenants of the police department earn more than he does. There's a breakdown in the structure, I feel, when the top person of any organization doesn't make at least a sizable comparative salary. It doesn't necessarily have to be the highest paid individual. But with many of the department heads making 50 to 60% more than the current sitting mayor, I think there's a breakdown in the structure. And on top of that, I have to agree with the original sentiment in the question, which is that you do not attract the best candidates for the job if the salary is not something that they can meet with. It's a critical disparity when somebody has to look at that and say, I'd love to try to do that job. I'm highly qualified for it. I can't afford the pay cut.
Would you be taking a pay cut, and would you be leaving your job if you were elected?
I have to leave my job. This is a full-time job, and I would be taking a 45% pay cut.
Is your job aware that you might be leaving at this point?
They are fully aware.
Thank you. That concludes the question and answer portion of the program. Each candidate will now have 3 minutes to make a closing statement. Mr. Zandri?
Thank you. I would like to extend my thanks to the Wallingford Community Women, especially for allowing the courtesy for allowing me a reschedule for this evening. My job requires me right now on a project to be working late in the city on Thursday evenings, and I would not have been able to attend. So in as much as they were able to accommodate my schedule, and of course, Mayor Dickinson, thank you for accommodating the change as well. I really do appreciate it. I also appreciate everybody in attendance this evening. This is more of what I like to see in these chambers. I wish we would see more of it. I really would like to see the town engaged and involved. And at a 39% turnout rate for local elections, I find that very disappointing. I really would like to see the town come out with some conviction during this election. We bring out 70% plus for gubernatorial races and 80% plus for presidential. Presidential elections where you're one vote in 150 million. There's 24,000 or so registered voters in town, and last time I think about 10,000 or so showed up. Never is your voice going to be louder than on a local election. I really want people to become involved and engaged. We have done some great things in this town, but over the years, between what the mayor has done, what the council has done, what the people have done when they've risen up to overturn things that they felt were not right and not just. But we need more people involved than 39%. We need everybody. The people in this town, you own this town. This is your town. We need you to be involved. We need you to show up. We need you to vote. The only constant in the universe is change, and we are not changing fast enough. We are getting blown away by our neighboring towns. They're going to eat our lunch as they move along, and we do not. A simple lesson can be learned from Borders Books. The CEO of that company thought he understood his business and his landscape and resisted the change to electronic readers. He was the only major bookstore chain that didn't go to them. And they're out of business now because that CEO always felt that his customer base is always going to want to hold a good book in their hand. You got to be able to understand the depth of the change around you. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind in it. In order to bring about change, you needed to bring about radical thinking. And I would like every person in Wallingford to think about that and make a simple choice to show up and vote. Choose your candidates wisely, get to know them, ask them questions, and commit yourselves to coming out and making a choice this November. It's your town. Get involved, get informed, and vote. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson?
Thank you. Also, thank you to everyone who makes this debate available and informative. One night at McChord Air Force Base in Washington, an airman was dispatched because an alarm went off on a perimeter fence. So the airman headed out there and discovered it was a raccoon that set it off. So he started flapping his arms and trying to scare the animal away. And over the public address system came the air traffic controller's voice, "Attention airmen, you at the end of the runway are cleared for takeoff." Cleared for takeoff. Wallingford is cleared for takeoff. And I've mentioned three things, and I think those are the three things that will make a difference, and they're new. One, the purchase of wholesale power. We are going to more than get our feet wet with regard to the whole electric grid issue, and I believe this will be an enormous change, not to the person buying electricity in Wallingford, but certainly the way we do business. We're going to understand a lot of things we didn't understand before. We're going to be a player. Wallingford should be. Energy is the lifeblood of modern society. You shut off power and you are back to survival within days. We frittered away that as a country. That's one. Secondly, emergency medical transport, our enterprise fund to allow more ambulances. The baby boom generation is resulting in, as I forget what the numbers are, but they're incredible every day, the number of people who are turning 65. That has resulted in an enormous increase in medical calls. I think it's over 70% of our ambulance, our fire response is medical. We are making a change there, and we're hoping it's going to work, not only just for Wallingford, but because the region has been stressed with regard to medical emergency response. And the third thing, graduation from high school. In today's world, education is a key. We as a community have got to say, you know, we want everyone to graduate. We need you to have information. We want you to be informed. We want you as citizens that will help make this town, this state, and this country great, greater than it has been. These are exciting things. We're ready for takeoff, so buckle your seatbelts, put the tray table up. We're taking off. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the question and answer portion of the program. Oops, sorry, wrong one. This concludes the mayoral segment of the 2013 Candidates Forum. On behalf of the Wallingford Community Women, I thank you for watching and remind you to vote on November 5th.